My name is Eleanor Brooks, and at 80 years old, I learned something terrifying about dependence. The longer people control your life, the harder it becomes to recognize when care slowly transforms into captivity. My daughter spent almost 6 years convincing everyone she was sacrificing her life to take care of me after my stroke. Friends praised her constantly. Neighbors admired her devotion. Doctors trusted her completely. And honestly, for a long time I trusted her too. Until the afternoon, I accidentally overheard a conversation that changed everything I thought I knew about my own family. Before I tell you how my daughter secretly prevented me from regaining independence because she depended on my money, make sure to subscribe. Because sometimes manipulation doesn't arrive through violence. Sometimes it arrives through kindness repeated so consistently that nobody questions the control hiding underneath it. I spent most of my adult life as a high school music teacher in Vermont. Simple life, simple pleasures, piano recitals, coffee shops, bookstores, Sunday dinners with friends. I married my husband Arthur when I was 26. He was gentle in ways quiet men often are. Not dramatic, not loud, just dependable. For 48 years, we built a peaceful life together. Nothing extravagant, but meaningful. We had one child, my daughter Caroline. And from the moment she was born, Arthur treated her like the center of the universe. Maybe too much sometimes. Caroline grew up intelligent, sensitive, emotionally intense. The kind of child who felt everything deeply. When she was happy, the whole house felt brighter. When she was upset, everyone adjusted around her emotions automatically. Looking back now, I realize we protected her from discomfort too often. Arthur especially. If Caroline struggled socially, he intervened. If she failed academically, he reassured her immediately. If life disappointed her, someone always softened consequences quickly. At the time, it felt like love. Now I understand that overprotection sometimes creates emotional fragility disguised as sensitivity. Caroline married young. Too young, honestly. The marriage collapsed within 4 years. Then another relationship failed. Then another. Eventually, she moved back home temporarily at 38, after losing both her job and apartment during the same difficult year. Temporary became permanent. At first, Arthur and I didn't mind. The house felt less lonely. And secretly, I think Caroline enjoyed returning to a life where someone else absorbed responsibility. Then Arthur died. Massive heart attack while gardening. One ordinary spring afternoon. Then suddenly ambulances, hospital lights, silence. After 48 years together, losing him felt like someone removed part of my nervous system. And after his death, everything around me changed quickly. Loneliness, confusion, depression. Then came my stroke 18 months later. Not severe enough to destroy cognition completely, but severe enough to affect balance, mobility, and speech temporarily. Recovery was possible according to doctors. Difficult, but possible. That's important. Possible. Because for a long time, I believed Caroline wanted that recovery just as much as I did. At first, she seemed extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. She attended every therapy session, managed medications, cooked meals, handled finances. Friends constantly praised her devotion. "You're lucky to have such a caring daughter," people kept saying. And honestly, I agreed. At first, but gradually, small things started feeling strange. Therapy appointments became inconsistent. Exercises got skipped. Caroline constantly insisted I was too tired for certain recovery activities. Whenever I tried becoming more independent, she discouraged me immediately. "You might fall. You're pushing too hard." The doctors said recovery takes time. Always gentle, always concerned, never direct enough to sound controlling, but constant, very constant. Over time, my world became smaller without me fully noticing. Fewer outings, less contact with friends, more dependence on Caroline for everything. Banking, transportation, medication schedules, even phone calls sometimes. And strangely enough, the weaker I became, the calmer Caroline seemed emotionally. That realization haunted me later. One afternoon during physical therapy, my therapist quietly asked, "Do you actually practice the exercises at home consistently?" I answered automatically, "Of course." But then I hesitated. Because honestly, many sessions had quietly stopped happening. Not officially. Practically. Caroline always had explanations. Scheduling issues. Fatigue cancer. Transportation complication. The therapist's expression changed subtly. That was the first moment doubt entered my mind seriously. Then came the medication incident. One evening, I accidentally discovered Caroline giving me incorrect dosage timing for certain prescriptions. Nothing life-threatening, but enough to increase fatigue significantly. When I questioned her, she immediately became defensive. "You're confused again." Confused again. That phrase became increasingly common over time, and honestly, that terrified me more than the medication itself. Because slowly I realized Caroline had started building a narrative around my supposed decline. Friends noticed too. Or rather, they noticed my absence. Phone calls decreased because Caroline often answered first. Social invitations stopped because apparently I was too exhausted. My life slowly narrowed until Caroline became the center of nearly every interaction. That's another terrifying thing about dependence. Isolation often arrives disguised as protection. Then came the conversation. The conversation that changed everything. It happened accidentally, one rainy afternoon. Caroline thought I was asleep upstairs while she spoke on the phone downstairs. I wasn't. And what I heard still chills me remembering it. "She's improving too fast," Caroline whispered. Silence. Then soft laughter. "No, if she starts managing things herself again, everything changes." My blood went cold instantly. Everything changes. The sentence echoed in my head repeatedly. Then came the line that shattered me completely. "I gave up my whole life taking care of her. I deserve security eventually." Security. Not recovery. Not happiness. Security. And suddenly, everything finally aligned. The discouragement. The dependency. The subtle isolation. The exhaustion narratives. Caroline's identity and financial stability had become emotionally tied to my dependence. That realization physically sickened me. Not because my daughter wanted security, because somewhere along the way she stopped wanting me to fully recover. For several days afterward, I said nothing. I simply watched carefully. And once suspicion enters, your mind patterns become impossible to ignore. Missed therapy appointments suddenly looked intentional. Medication timing seemed manipulative. Every helpful restriction now felt strategic. Then I discovered something even worse. Caroline had quietly started discussing long-term guardianship options with an attorney. Guardianship. Without my knowledge. I cried harder that night than I cried after my stroke. Because betrayal from strangers hurts differently than betrayal from children. Children know exactly where your emotional defenses are weakest. Eventually, I contacted my therapist privately. Then an attorney. Then my doctor. What followed became one of the most humiliating experiences of my life. Evaluations. Financial reviews. Medical assessments. Essentially proving I remained mentally competent despite Caroline's growing narrative. Thankfully, evidence accumulated quickly. My therapist documented concerns. Friends confirmed unusual isolation patterns. Medication inconsistencies became medically obvious. And eventually, the truth surfaced completely. Caroline wasn't physically abusing me. She genuinely believed she was helping. That's what made everything so psychologically disturbing. Somewhere along the way, caregiving became her identity, her purpose, her financial structure, her emotional leverage, and unconsciously, my recovery threatened all of it. The confrontation happened inside my living room during autumn rain. I still remember Caroline's face when my attorney explained concerns formally. Shock first, then anger, then devastation. "You think I wanted her sick?" she screamed. And honestly, no, I don't think she consciously wanted that. I think she became emotionally dependent on being needed. There's a difference. A tragic difference. Then Caroline started crying uncontrollably. Real crying. Not manipulation. Collapse. "I don't know who I am without taking care of you," she whispered. That sentence broke my heart completely. Because beneath all the control was still my little girl. Lost, emotionally fragile. Terrified of abandonment and purposelessness after years of personal failure. Understanding that didn't erase the damage, but it changed the shape of my anger. Today I live independently in a senior community near Burlington. I manage my own medications, my own schedule, my own life. Caroline and I still speak. Carefully. Slowly. With boundaries now. Real boundaries. She entered therapy eventually. And for the first time in decades, she's building an identity separate from caregiving and dependence. Some days our relationship even feels hopeful again. Not healed completely, but honest. And honestly, honesty matters more than appearances ever did. Before Arthur died, he once told me, "The most dangerous forms of control are the ones people convince themselves are love." At the time, I thought he sounded cynical. Now I understand exactly what he meant. Have you ever realized someone's help slowly started taking away your independence instead of protecting it? Tell me in the comments below. And if this story touched you, please like and subscribe. Because sometimes the hardest part of aging isn't weakness itself. It's learning how to recognize when love quietly becomes control.